We meet today at a pivotal moment in history. Across the globe, societies are being reshaped by climate change, technological disruption, economic transformation, political instability, militarization, and social movements demanding justice, equality, and inclusion. It is in this shifting landscape that it is increasingly evident that feminist leadership, and I want to make this distinction between women's leadership in general and feminist leadership, that feminist leadership is central to shaping the direction, values, and outcomes of the emerging global order. Leadership in the contemporary world cannot be reduced to positions, titles, or symbolic representation. From a feminist perspective, leadership must be conceptualized beyond individual authority or hierarchical command, and instead understood as a relational, structural, and transformative process. It involves the capacity to critically engage with and disrupt entrenched norms, institutional arrangements, and asymmetrical power relations, while cultivating collective agency, accountability, and care. Feminist leadership thus seeks not only representation within existing systems, but the fundamental reconstitution of these systems to enable equality, justice, and inclusive social transformation. Across the globe, women are increasingly asserting an agency in political, economic, and social spheres, yet their contributions remain systemically undervalued, and structural barriers rooted in patriarchal norms, sociocultural expectations, and historical inequities continue to limit access to leadership. These changes are particularly acute for women situated in the intersection of multiple identities, including class, ethnicity, geography, education, disability, and other socially structured positions that shape differential access to power, resources, and opportunities. Understanding leadership through this lens is critical. The changing global order will only be inclusive and sustainable if women's perspectives and experiences are integrated at all levels. Sri Lanka's post-war, post-colonial journey offers powerful lessons. Decades of conflict, structural inequality, and legacies of colonial economic systems have left communities marginalized, particularly women, rural populations, and plantation workers. Yet these same communities have repeatedly demonstrated extraordinary resilience. Women have led in rebuilding families and livelihoods, sustaining local economies, and finding innovative solutions to complex challenges, often in the absence of institutional support. In moments of crisis, communities respond with strength and solidarity. Within this collective effort, women we experienced this in the aftermath of the cyclone Ditwa, which hit us end of November, and the way in which communities came together to help each other and to support the recovery was truly amazing, and women were once again at the forefront of this. And women contribute not only to recovery work, but also to carry the responsibility of holding households together, caring for children and the elderly, and maintaining stability at home, enabling others to engage in response and recovery efforts outside. This largely unseen labor is fundamental to community survival and recovery, and reflects a form of leadership grounded in care, responsibility, and endurance. Economically, women's contributions are often invisible or undervalued, particularly in the sphere of unpaid care work, informal labor, and agriculture. Beyond aggregate growth, many reports underscore the transformative social outcomes of women engaging in paid work, but rarely acknowledge their role in unpaid care work, which continues to remain invisible and continues to be unrecognized in many calculations or many understandings of how women work. Beyond the economic rationale, figures or the experiences of women's work emphasizes a fundamental feminist imperative. Economies must serve equality, justice, and societal well-being, and understand and value work in all its different forms. From a political standpoint, exclusion of women from decision-making is not incidental. It is structurally maintained through gendered power hierarchies. Attacks on women in leadership, I think we all know what that feels like, particularly in politics, through harassment, character assassination, and systemic marginalization often force capable women, including those aspiring to leadership, to withdraw or refrain from participation. Feminist political theory underscores that democracy and justice cannot be realized without addressing systemic inequalities in representation and voice. Kumari Jayawardena, a prominent Sri Lankan feminist scholar, observes, you can have a queen, you can have all sorts of situations where it looks like a woman is in charge or women are at the top, but that doesn't mean that patriarchy has gone or that women are not oppressed in terms of wage, employment, society, customs, superstitions. I'm going to end with a little personal reflection. Sri Lanka, as you know, produced the first female prime minister in the world as far back as in 1960. And since then, I'm the third female prime minister in Sri Lanka. We've had a female president who was elected twice. Yet, despite women being elected to those top positions, our parliament was never able to exceed over 5% of female representation, right? And both the first female prime minister and the first female president came from very powerful political families. It was in 2024, when my government was elected to power, that we managed to change this and double the number of women in parliament. So we went from 5% to a measly 10%, right? This is also far from enough, but it was a good start. And of the 22 women in parliament currently, including myself, all of us representing my party come from non-political families. We are not there because of our husbands, brothers, or fathers. Many of us are newbies to politics. We've entered parliament or entered into electoral politics for the first time. So it's marked a real change, I think. But with that change, there is also a disruption and an anxiety at all levels about how to handle these unusual women in these positions of authority and in such public sort of view and subject to so much public exposure. But I think this is how change happens, and we are hopeful. And in this uncertain world, we were just talking before this, that for us in our part of the world, uncertainty and instability is not new. We've known how to deal with it. We've always had to strive to maintain our sovereignty against all odds, to maintain economic and political sovereignty that's challenged from all sides. So this is not new to us, this current situation, the current kind of global uncertainty that we are all experiencing. But one thing we know, we can get through this, and we can get through this, and I offer to you Sri Lanka as a story of hope and optimism in this very, very turbulent world today. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for those remarks. I think what I love hearing is in a time of what we feel like is unprecedented uncertainty and change, that there are some playbooks and leaders and moments to look to in history, but also your sense of optimism. I think you did a really beautiful job of outlining the dynamics around why we need more women in leadership, the economic case, the talent case as it relates to communities and the like. But now being in this position right now, you called yourself an outsider. Many of your peers in Parliament, female peers are as well. When you're in those quarters of power, what are the types of conversations or skill sets or areas of focus that you believe you're uniquely bringing to the table in a way that is about gender, but also really speaks to the power of the perspective you bring?
I think women's experiences and their lived realities are always very complicated. We occupy multiple positions simultaneously. And I think we bring that complexity to the table whenever there are discussions. We're always the ones who ask the difficult questions, always so kind of go, but, So I think that's important. But also I think it's a different model of leadership that women can also bring, where we understand the importance of juggling multiple roles. We understand the importance of acknowledging multiple obligations and responsibilities. And I think we bring that to the table, and we are much more sensitive and empathetic to those kinds of situations, which are reflected by the vast majority of people who we are expected to serve. So I think that perspective always brings something new and something more nuanced to the table and to the decision-making process.
In so many of the conversations, which has really struck me here at Davos from world leaders and business leaders alike, is the fact that these terms such as empathy and collaboration are now coming to the forefront of leadership conversations, not seen as sort of the soft secondary skills, but the ones that are required to lead in a meaningful way. That being said, you made a great point. Just because you may have a woman at the top of a country or a company, it doesn't mean the institutions or the structures change. In your position right now, again, numbers help create that momentum. But when you're inside this dynamic, how do you think about shifting those power structures in a way that builds momentum, but also allows you to change culture and do so in a way that is more enduring?
Yeah, because this is where I kind of also mentioned the fact that it's not just having women in positions of power, it's feminist leadership that makes the critical difference. Because I think for so long, for many years, we've kind of projectified women's positions or made it a very tactical, transactional kind of relationship rather than one that is truly transformative. And for something to be transformative, I think it has to be based in some kind of ideological position, political position. It has to be at the very least value-based. And I think if you don't bring those kinds of conversations, and if you're not sort of grounded in a commitment to equality, commitment to social justice, committed to the power of transformation through politics, then it's a very superficial kind of very transactional engagement that you're occupying. I mean, and we saw that in Sri Lanka. I mean, I have great respect for our first female prime minister. She survived against all odds, and she came at a moment, and she was really strong, and she was really a good leader. So was her daughter, who in later years was elected as president. They were good leaders. But it didn't change much for women or for other non-elite groups, right? So unless you're consciously positioning yourself in that transformative role, just because you're a woman, you're not going to really shift any structures.
You're in a transformative role. People may not shift structures, but also even when you intend to do so, it doesn't always necessarily mean that you can bring stakeholders along. And even if you have a shared vision, and especially if there's a unique moment in time for your country, are there any lessons that you've learned around coming into this position? Change is very difficult. New leadership dynamics and new leadership types are very difficult. Is there one or two lessons you've learned on bringing other stakeholders along or bringing consensus from those who may have seen that sort of your being in power is somehow either taking away or antithetical to what they see as important?
Yes, I think two things. One is that the reason why I am in this position today, and also why my peers are in parliament today, is that we consciously really mobilized at the grassroots level. You know, I think there's this tendency to ignore grassroots work now, the importance of really building alliances and bringing people along with you, bringing your constituents along with you on this path and on this journey. And I think we really put in a lot of effort into that, and that's one of the reasons why we are where we are and why we can also raise a voice and be heard and be acknowledged and be supported. But at the other time, I think your question is specifically about how you speak to those who disagree with you and how you deal with your opponents or people who may, or even within our own party, who don't necessarily always understand what feminist leadership is about. But I think that their patience is important, incremental steps are important, listening to each other, and I think acknowledging that these kinds of fundamental social transformations take time and a lot of work. And you can't sort of bulldoze your way through. You have to take people along with you, and that these changes are not, you know, one in one sector or the other. It's not just cultural, it's not just economic, it's not just political. It's all of these, right? And that takes time. So you really need to be able to put in that work and understand that you may be only playing one part of that role, and you have to make sure that there are others to take over and carry on, because this is a journey.
It's a journey. I think patience is so important when you think about these things. I know we are wrapping up. As we wrap up, one very quick question. You talked about influence today being very different things. You don't have to be head of state. You can activate at the grassroots level. When you think about the term power and what it means to you today, how would you define power in a role such as yours?
Gosh. I think it's not about authority. It's not about wielding power. It's about being able to shift things, being able to be able to have a voice, to be heard, and to be able to, in a way, take people along with you. Right? It gives you a platform. I think I'm not sure whether I would describe this position as being one of power, but one of influence, and one that gives you a platform to be heard, to encourage others to come along with you, and to be really able to shift things along in your daily kind of the daily intricacies or the daily quotidian work that you do engage in.
Well, Prime Minister, thank you, because I think influence and the way you describe power, it's a new paradigm power, and it's one that I think someone such as yourself and many women who I admire in positions such as yours bring to the table in such an important, meaningful way at this moment in time. So thank you for the insights shared. You said women are doing many, many things all at once, and I know you are as well, especially this week, so we're all the more grateful for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.